Chord families are the cornerstone of learning and playing music. Hi, I'm Tomas from Real Guitar Success. Let's say you're learning a song by ear. You're going to listen to the song and figure out what chords to use. Would you rather have this? These are all the possible chords that you could choose from to play the song. You'll have to admit it's kind of an unorganized mess. Or would you rather have this? These are the same chords organized into chord families. Not only does it look more organized, but once you figure out the key of the song, you've narrowed your job to choosing from just about 6, maybe 7 chords if you include the diminished. You can see that organizing chords into chord families not only makes it easier to learn songs, but makes it much easier to practice efficiently and to create your own music. And don't worry about figuring out the key. I'll put a link to a video that tells you more about that. Let's stay with this chord family concept for now. Here's how it works. Here we have the C major scale, and we're going to build a chord off each step of the scale. So the C scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C again. I didn't put the last C on there. So we can make a chord out of each degree of the scale. And I'm just using the C scale as a demonstration. We could pick any scale. But with the C scale, if we take the notes out of the C scale, the first chord, the 1 chord, is going to be C. Clever, huh? There are 3 major chords if you just use the notes in the scale. The 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. That's C, F, and G in the key of C. There are also 3 minor chords. And again, we're just using notes out of the C scale. So the D chord, the E chord, and the A minor chord. That's the 2, 3, and 6 chord. So you probably realized what I'm doing. I've numbered each of the scale degrees, and I'm calling the chord based on the scale degree number. So the C chord is going to be called the 1 chord. The D chord is the 2 chord, or D minor in this case. The 3 chord E minor. The 4 chord F major. The 5 chord G major. The 6 chord A minor. And the 7th chord is the one that's a little different. It's a diminished chord. In this case, B diminished. Now, the diminished chord is just not used so much in popular music. So for now, I'm just going to leave it out of the discussion to keep things kind of focused. Let's talk Roman numerals for a minute. A common way to distinguish these chords that are built on the scale is with Roman numerals. We use capital Roman numerals for the major chords and small letter or lowercase Roman numerals for the minor chords. You can see them underneath the scale degrees. The diminished chord is indicated sort of like a minor chord with lowercase, but it has this little circle next to it that indicates diminished. This is a traditional way of indicating chord progressions, and it's used fairly commonly. There's another system also where you just include the number, and for minor chords, you add a little M to indicate minor, and for diminished, a circle, and so on. If there's none of those, it means major. You can see in the big Roman numerals, I'm indicating a chord progression, and this is where it really comes in handy. This particular progression is one of many common chord progressions. I've indicated the Arabic numbers, what we call them, underneath the Roman numerals, just to give you a reference. I'm going to play this chord progression so you hear it. It starts off with a big Roman numeral 1, so that's a 1 chord, a C. Then it goes to the 5 chord, that's a big Roman numeral 5, B. And then to a 6 chord, notice it's a lowercase, so it's a minor chord. And then to the 4 chord, again, a major chord. That's a common chord progression. I want to talk just a little bit about the functions of the chord. The 1 chord we often call the home chord. It has a sense of stability. When you get to the 1 chord, you kind of feel a sense of rest. In the key of C, that's going to be the C chord. Now, let's go on to the 5 chord, in this case, G chord. The 5 chord, also called a dominant chord, has this sense of tension, and it's the first chord that kind of brings tension into the mix. The tension tends to want to pull back to the home chord. So when you play the 1 chord and the 5 chord, there's a sense of wanting to go back to that 1 to get to a place of rest. One way to look at music is just about tension and release. You're kind of going on a trip and you feel tension and then it resolves slightly, but there's a trick and it doesn't quite resolve and it goes back to another chord and then finally comes to the home chord and then starts a whole nother series of tension and release. We've got the 1 and the 5, the two probably most important chords in any key because of that relationship of tension and going back to home. What we're going to add now, the 4 chord, in this case an F. The 4 chord has a sense of wanting to go to the 5 chord. So now you're kind of setting yourself up. 4 to 5 to 1. Listen. C, 4, G chord, 5, and then there's even a stronger pull to get back to 1, to feel like you're back home, back to rest. The 4 chord, the function name is called subdominant. So now we've got the home chord, also known as the tonic chord. We've got the 5 chord, the dominant chord, and the subtonic, right? 4. Don't worry too much about those names. I just wanted you to hear them at least once. Let's go on to the minor chords. The 2 chord functions very similar to a 4 chord. Other times you'll see in music that they use the 2 chord kind of in the same place you'd use a 4 chord, but gives it a little different flavor because it's minor. Listen, D minor to the 5 chord G and going home. Okay? The 3 chord, another minor chord, often is used to go to the 4 chord. So it's kind of, again, another setup. So it's going 3, 4, 5, and 1. Listen to this. 3, 4, 5, and 1. Now, I'll tell you right now, don't take these descriptions of the functions too seriously. I want you to have an essence of kind of traditionally how people think about it. But part of modern music is kind of breaking the rules and surprising you. Here's an example. The 6 chord is often used as a kind of a surprise. When you hear a progression, it seems like it's leading up to the home chord. All of a sudden, you'll throw in a 6 and it kind of shocks you. Then it'll go back around and resolve to the 1 chord, which will make you feel home. Listen to this. Here's an example. 4, 5, remember, we're going to feel like 1. Again. Adds a little interest to it. Now, I know this seems like a lot of information the first time around, but here's the 4 most important things to remember. First off, the chord families we're discussing are all based on a scale, in this case, the major scale. Secondly, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are all major. And 3, the 2 chord, 3 chord, and 6 chord are minor. And then finally, number 4, the 7th chord is a diminished chord. It might be worth watching this video a few times and let it just soak in. Here's a quick story to demonstrate how practical this is. I used to hire myself out as what we call a hired gun. Basically, if somebody needed a substitute for the band, their guitar player didn't show up, they could hire me to come play. So I got a call like a few days before a gig, and there was no time to even practice anything that the band was playing, but they needed somebody right away. So I went to the gig without seeing any of the music. The band leader would call out the key of the song. He'd tell me if there was a chord somewhere in the song that's a little different or unexpected. He'd say something like, look out for the 3 flat on this song, kind of to the side so the audience wasn't listening. The gig went perfectly smooth. It was a heck of fun. And afterwards, I remember one of the audience came up and said, gee, you guys are great. How long have you been playing together? I know you're probably thinking it's not likely I'm going to get called out to go fill in for somebody in the near future. But you can see how this whole concept can make it so much easier and fun to learn songs, and for me to create my own music. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Hey, as a bonus, I want to give you a copy of that chart that I showed you earlier, the chord family chart. I call it a key change chord chart because you can also use the same chart for knowing how to change keys from one to the other. And that's another benefit of understanding chord families. If you like what I'm doing, let me know, give me a thumbs up, and most importantly, leave me some kind of comment. Let me know if there's a video you'd like to see me make. This is day 13 of my 30-day guitar coaching, and I'd love to get your input on what you'd like to see somewhere in the next, 18 days. I'm off. Hope to see you tomorrow.